If you're a savvy media consumer, you probably know how to spot branded content, which looks like journalism but is really advertising paid for by a client and produced with their input. But sometimes the line between advertising and reporting can get blurry. Case in point, the Boston Globe's recent coverage of Boston Children's Hospital. Adam has more.
Children's Hospital is one of Boston's signature institutions.
A family from Washington State is crossing the country for a medical miracle. They're headed to Boston Children's Hospital.
So it's no surprise that when Children's celebrated its 150th anniversary, the media took notice.
Founded in 1869 as a 20-bed hospital for children.
But the Boston Globe took it to the next level, publishing this glossy special issue with plenty of children's advertising and 16 gushing features. A snippet. Boston Children's has a long history of inventing new treatments or adapting new technologies, and that work continues today. There was no skepticism, and two recent controversies at Children's went unmentioned.
A Connecticut teen separated from her parents, held against her will at a hospital out of state.
What we're talking about doing is destroying the foremost healing garden probably in the world.
For the record, the Globe does do branded content and actually made these videos for Children's a few years ago.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But Globe spokeswoman Jane Bowman says the special issue was straightforward journalism, produced by the newsroom with no collaboration with the advertiser, even if that's not how it reads.
Well, first of all, I mean, we've talked about the decline of ad revenue for the newspapers. I mean, I understand their efforts to do anything, you know, to bring more revenue in. And this is not the most egregious thing in the world, but it's clearly an advertising vehicle. And there was a collaboration between, as you reported, between the business side of the Boston Globe and the public relations side of Children's Hospital.
Yeah, on the ad side, Children's worked with the Globe to identify people who might want to buy advertising in this. And in a way, I'm not sure that it matters if there wasn't editorial input from Children's, because if you are aware of what's going on, of what this special issue is and how it's operating, you're going to, I think, end up reporting and editing accordingly. You are not going to, go try to dig up dirt on Children's. Now, in this case, of course, it's an institution. There has been controversy attached to it. Their mission is a pretty commendable one, right?
Yeah.
Saving children's lives. But I still find it, I would have been sure that this was sponsored content when I picked it up and read it. And they marked it, by the way, just really quickly. Online, they marked it with this weird little presented by Children's Hospital bug, which I thought meant it was sponsored content. Jane Bowman says it's actually something advertisers can do. They can pay to get proximity to certain content, but again, doesn't mean that they are writing the pieces.
So I spent about 5 years working in the Boston Globe magazine, and I currently work for U.S. News and World Report, which ranks Boston Children's at the top of the list for children's hospitals. But when I say that this is sponsored content, meaning that it's not necessarily advertorial, but definitely in partnership with a source or a client, there's no shame in partnered content and sponsored content, but it's not straight journalism. The fact that they didn't address certain controversies with children, that means something. The fact that it's presented by the entity that's the focus of the entire issue means something. The fact that the Globe magazine editor supervised this means something. It's not unbiased. It's not middle of the road. There's an issue here, and it should be disclosed.
There is a lack of clarity here, and I think the Globe owes it to its readers to be as clear as possible as to exactly where this fits in on the spectrum between hard-hitting journalism and paid content. It's somewhere in between, and I don't think we're still completely sure where it is on that spectrum. Right. Let me just give one example. The lack of clarity of the term that they use, presented by, which they've used online. There is a huge difference between a children's hospital story that's presented by Children's Hospital and the huge and really terrific climate change story that they did, that Nestor Ramos wrote, that is presented by Point Insurance. There's a huge difference between those things, but they're using the same term.
Yeah.
You've got to be clear.
Right. Sponsored content doesn't mean that the advertiser or the client wrote it, had input in it, did anything other than make it possible for that to run.
That is, by the way, that's a commonsensical definition. I don't think it's the Globe's definition. For they frame it the other way.
Yeah, I just want to follow up with Lylah and say, why don't just say what you did? Yeah. This content was presented by the Boston Children's Hospital, edited by a Globe editor, rewrote it, in celebration of this 150th.
In celebration, that would have told you everything.
That's exactly
all
right.
The stories were
That's
upbeat,
exactly
positive.
Right.
Everybody had a great outcome.
That's exactly
right. Children die. There's horrible things that happen.
That's right. So we're celebrating 150. And, if you want questions about it, we took money for it because this is the way that, we're doing it. And just tell us.
Partnerships
then I can decide for myself.
Partnerships are the norm. This is a normal way of doing business now in the media with partnerships and sponsored content. But there's still journalism involved. You just can't say that it's entirely straight journalism.
But Justine, I don't want to talk too much here, but because I've been emailing Jane Bowman all week long, it is not my understanding that Children's paid to have these pieces written. They provided advertising that helped make this special issue happen, but I don't think they paid the Globe to write the stuff. And they also didn't present the Globe the stories and then have them edited. The stories were reported out by Globe News
but for
staff.
instance, one of the stories was about a mother whose child had some very strange chromosomal disorder, and a version of that same story had appeared on the website of Children's Hospital in February. So clearly either the Globe got it off the website or they said, hey, here's a good story for you to do.
Jane Bowman also pointed out they did this for MIT when MIT had its 150th anniversary, and I believe for UMass when it had its 100th maybe. This is easy for me to say because I work in public media and I don't need to worry about making the numbers work. But I think it's worth considering, do you want to do this sort of thing for big, important institutions that you are also going to be covering critically? And finally, she says they're going to be reassessing the terminology they use to make this stuff clearer to readers.
All right, say it. That's what I'm saying.